gonna use the microphone. I know there aren't that many of us, but I think I will anyway, so everybody can hear me. My name is Sarah Vetter. I'm part of the library's community engagement team, and thank you for coming. You know, we have kind of a gloomy, dark night out, and there was a lot of competition with the Ofrenda Day of the Dead celebration we have going on at the library, but we appreciate your being here. I am going to record this, so this will be available on the library's YouTube channel in a few days. So I can send links out if anybody wants to leave me your email address. So World Stroke Day is right around the corner. It's actually October 29th. And did you know that globally, 1 in 4 people 25 and over will suffer a stroke at some time in their life? So if there were 100 people in here, 25 of them would experience stroke. Yet most adults in the US don't know the warning signs of a stroke, or that stroke is largely preventable, treatable, and beatable. We're very fortunate to have Sandra Parker here, who's with Advocate Hospital System, and she is going to tell us how to recognize the signs of a stroke and what to do if you think you're experiencing one. And we'll also hear from Jim, who's experienced a stroke himself, and he's going to share his story. So right now, let's welcome Sandra Parker, stroke coordinator at Advocate Lutheran now, right? Okay, thank you.
So hello everyone. A light for the next one?
A light? We can light it up.
We did test it out. If there's more light up here, it's harder to see the screen. Oh, okay. But I can stand closer here.
Yeah, maybe you can come to the light, Sandra.
Yeah. There we go. How was that? I can sit on a stool. I feel like this is a poetry reading. So my name is Sandra Parker. About a week ago, I was the stroke coordinator at Advocate Sherman Hospital, but this week I started at Advocate Lutheran. So both within the Advocate system, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you and that you guys came. Like Sarah said, there's lots of competition. Here we go. And then my name is Sandra, and then Jim will introduce himself when he comes up in the middle of the presentation. So, does anyone know what these celebrities have in common?
They all had strokes.
They did, and you can notice that they vary in age greatly. Some of them, Larry King, are a little older, whereas Frankie Muniz and Audrey Plaza, I believe, both had strokes in their 20s. So stroke does not discriminate on age, gender, and we'll learn more about all of that as we go on. Do a little bit of a quiz. Don't worry, all you have to do is raise your hand. Sorry for those in the recording, you won't be able to see. So raise your hand if you know someone who has suffered from a stroke. And I find that that's usually the people who come to see these education is if stroke has touched their lives in some way. Otherwise, in the community, there's not much talk about stroke. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to engage with it. They very much are distant. So I'm glad to see that you guys are here and that stroke, I'm not glad to see that stroke has touched your life, but I'm glad to know that you're doing something about it. Does anyone know what the acronym BFAST stands for? Jim.
Come on, Jim.
Okay, we got one. Can you name one risk factor for having a stroke?
Smoking?
Yep. Correct, smoking. And I said you didn't have to shout things, but I lied. What percentage of strokes are preventable?
80.
Yes, 80% of strokes are preventable through lifestyle interventions. And knowing the warning signs of a stroke saves lives. Yes, lots of high nods. That's absolutely true. So be fast. This is how we teach everyone in the community to recognize strokes. This is what we use in the hospital and the emergency department, and this is what our emergency service providers use. So be fast is very common amongst healthcare workers and in the community, and it's a useful tool because obviously it spells out be fast, and time is brain, so we want to recognize the signs of a stroke quickly and then intervene, so call 911 in our case. And we're gonna go through each of these one by one. So balance. Balance can be tricky. That's the thing about Be Fast. It's not enough to know it, but you think it takes a little bit of critical thinking too. So balance, somebody could be off balance, so they could be walking and they might walk into walls or be holding on to something to walk. They could say that they feel dizzy, that they had a sudden onset of dizziness, that they're having trouble sitting up. That could be balance. Loss of coordination. Sometimes I'll go to reach for something and my hand doesn't seem to listen, or I can't touch my nose, and my coordination is off. You'll notice that walking to, or the test that we do is touching your nose. You should be able to find your nose wherever you are. So that could be a sign of a stroke, and it's one that not many people know about. I think FAST was what we initially used, but then we realized we were missing some of those more difficult signs to pick up on, like balance and, well, next one is eyes. So we added these two more recently. So eyes. This stands for trouble seeing. So when you look at these pictures, this is what the whole picture should look like, but if you're missing half of your visual field, you might only see that left side in front of you. Same thing with the picture above it. So double vision, any painless vision loss. That happened to my grandma. She lost her vision in the left half of both of her eyes, and then she went to bed. It didn't hurt. It was all, you can deal with that in the morning. So she wakes up, her vision hadn't returned, and she called me. And I said, Grandma, painless vision loss is an emergency. And then I heard her yell, Bill! Bill's my grandpa. Did you know painless vision loss is an emergency? So yes, don't be like my grandma. But if you lose your vision, even though stroke doesn't always hurt, and sometimes I think we equate pain with an emergency, but our brain is a vital organ and we want to treat that as an emergency as well. So blurry vision, double vision, sometimes you might notice you're having trouble reading, and that might be your only symptom. And that could be a sign of a stroke and definitely worth coming to the hospital. We hear all the time, we don't want to bother you, but that's why we're there. We want you to bother us. F stands for face. So you can see in this picture, the left side of that woman's face, or her mouth is drooping down. And so that's what we're looking for. Does one side of the face droop, or is it numb? People might say, I can't feel that side of my face. And that could be another sign of a stroke. A stands for arms. You could have people lift up their arms, and if one falls, then that could be a sign of a stroke, and that counts for legs too. And we also want to know, is there any numbness or tingling? Some people will have just numbness in their arm, and so when they're going to do something, they can't feel the sensation in their fingers, so it might feel very abnormal. Again, not something big that you would think, oh, I need to get help right now, but just, again, and this would be any sudden numbness or arm weakness, and then legs as well. Speech. So that's tiny lettering, but is the speech slurred? Is someone having trouble speaking? You can ask people to repeat a simple sentence, like the sky is blue. We always say it's a sunny day in Elgin, except not right now. You could ask people to identify things. You know, can you tell me what this is? If you're not sure if they're having trouble speaking or not. Sometimes this one can be hard because people are creative, and when they're coming in with a stroke, they'll answer yes, no, yes and no, and you have to really pull it out of them. So one time we asked somebody, what's your address at home? And then they couldn't respond to that, and that's kind of how we figured out that they were having trouble speaking. So don't let them trick you. And then time. So time can stand for, or T can stand for time, or terrible headache. but time is of the essence. There is a medicine that we can use to treat an ischemic stroke, which we'll go over next, but we only have 4.5 hours. So this medicine, the time is very limited. So it's important that you know the last time that you felt like yourself. So that could be, sometimes it's when you went to bed the night before and then you wake up and you feel funny. But it's important to know that time so that we know if it's safe to give you that medicine. But as soon as you recognize the symptoms in yourself or somebody you love, and often it's somebody you love or somebody who you witnessed out in public, then you want to call 911 right away. And then terrible headache. The second type of stroke, so we talked about ischemic, that's that. We'll go back to that. The second type of stroke is hemorrhagic, and this one is associated with the worst headache of your life, or a headache that is unusual for you. So if you're used to getting headaches, but this one doesn't go away with your usual treatments and it's lingering and you can't get rid of it, then definitely, if it's different for you, definitely worth seeking treatment. How many knew there's 2 different types of strokes? A couple. Yeah. Yes, so ischemic stroke. So this is commonly thought of as a stroke that's caused by a blood clot or an occlusion that blocks off the blood flow to the brain. So you see that artery here in that little area that's not getting blood flow. Our brain does not store energy. So as soon as that blood flow is cut off, it's not getting oxygen, nutrients, and it begins to die. So it's really important that we either treat that clot with medicine or we have a procedure that we can do. But again, time is the big thing. But that's an ischemic stroke. And then a hemorrhagic stroke is bleeding into the brain. So the most common risk factor for this one is high blood pressure. This can be caused by an aneurysm, any sort of vascular malformations, or just those little arteries in your brain that can burst because of high blood pressure. So why does this matter? And we heard a little bit about this in the beginning. It's because stroke has a big impact on our lives, on our community, on the healthcare system, and we know that 80% of strokes are preventable. So if we understand the signs to look for, hopefully we can get help sooner and decrease that lifetime risk of disability, or we can take steps to look at our risk factors today and hopefully prevent a stroke tomorrow. And then, like I said earlier, stroke doesn't really discriminate, but there are things that put you more at risk. So stroke is the leading cause of death for Americans. That's not true, it's not the leading cause of death. It's number 5 now. It used to be number 4, but as our treatments have gotten better, it's actually gone down, which we like to see. But the risk of having a first stroke is nearly twice as high for Black Americans than it is for whites. And if you are Black and you have a stroke, you're more likely to have higher disability. So these are important to know in your community so that you understand your risks and you can do things to mitigate those risks. In 2014, 38% of people hospitalized for a stroke were less than 65 years old. And I can tell you from experience, and I've only been doing this job for a couple of years, that people are coming in younger and younger. So now I would like to introduce you to Jim, our stroke survivor. Come on up, Jim. So I think when it comes to spreading stroke awareness, it's important to amplify the voices of those who've had a stroke.
All right. I'm Jim. Yeah, I had my stroke on Thanksgiving Day in 2011. And of course, naturally I had what you call TIAs before that, So I put my hand up like this and hit me in the head. But being not knowing a doctor, I didn't know what it was. And I would have slurred speech, and I thought it was from eating ice cream or something. Your eyes, your mouth would freeze. No. And I'd fall down. It was just stuff. Yeah, and Thanksgiving Day I was helping getting the turkey out, and then naturally, when the bathroom came out, I left the bathroom light on, which I never do. I'm old, I guess. And they're going, something wrong with you. And they went in the little computer thing, and I couldn't figure anything out. So my processing's crappy, and I couldn't talk real well. And so naturally, instead of calling 911, which I'm supposed to do, like you should do, naturally, all right, my wife says, oh, you're having a stroke. Takes me to the Advocate Health Center. No, oh God, when I go, okay. There's like 1,000 people on Thanksgiving people on this thing. Where are these people coming from? So I had to wait to get in. And, finally, they said, yeah, you have a stroke. No kidding. They sent me to Sherman to get a TPA, which is clears out your arteries a little bit. Then they right away they sent me to Central Page, which is Northwestern, I think now. And I was in ICU for almost 2 weeks, a little more than. And so, and right now I still have 100% blocked artery on this side, and this side has a stent in it, so I'm hanging on this stuff. So, but yeah, I had pretty much all the symptoms of a stroke with not knowing it. And you have to tell the doctor, and some they don't. Sometimes you don't want to say it. So, but yeah, so I've been doing the stroke support group stuff since 2016. I run the stroke support groups in Sherman, and Craig and I do. We call the people that had stroke symptoms since 2016. We call them up and we follow up and see how they're doing to make sure they're getting therapy, any resources and all that. So we've been doing that for a long time too. So Craig had the stroke on the left side, mine's on the right side. But yeah, it's always, when I had my stroke too, I couldn't speak. And so that was the hardest thing for me. Yeah, trying to write stuff down, which of course, my right hand, I couldn't write very well. So I couldn't speak at all. So that was, my therapy was pretty much speech therapy all the time, all day. Because you couldn't speak, it's hard. Because I couldn't learn, I couldn't read anything, I couldn't say anything. Because I have aphasia, but I have apraxia too, which means I couldn't tell, I put my tongue in my mouth, I couldn't tell what teeth to put around, like when you're a little kid, sometimes RNS or whatever. And I couldn't say other words. So I had to learn how to, where to put my tongue in my mouth to say any words. So that took me a while, but that was fine. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about the physical stuff. I didn't care. I wanted speech. And so finally I've got better on the speech now, a little bit. I still have aphasia a little bit sometimes, but yeah. And so that was the big thing for me. Now I'm doing, like, balance is one of the big things, which tomorrow I go to my therapy for balance, which happens to be my golf instructor too. He's a doctor of occupational therapy, so it's perfect. So, but I go there for my balance, because that's one of the hard things. If you have balance, your quality of life just goes down. You couldn't get out of a chair, couldn't walk, and so the balance is really important. So that's what I do for that. And then, so, yeah, but you're right. I think I didn't know a lot about the strokes, because Craig and I go to the rooms once a month, the stroke floor, and we visit the people in the rooms. We've done it for forever, and tell the virus thing. And we went to every room, and that's when I realized, you know, fast is the big thing, you know, face and arms and all, but B-fast is big, because when I got those rooms, I didn't realize how many people had vision problems. Until you go through the rooms, you go, holy cow, I didn't know that. And then all of a sudden, they came out with B-fast, oh, I could have told you this. And so yeah, vision's a big deal, and I still, because they run the stroke support groups in Sherman, you get a lot of them with the vision problems now. And so it's good that we recognize that we're doing that. And
Jim, I want to point out two important things you said.
okay.
You said you had TIAs in the past.
Oh yeah.
So can you explain what a TIA is?
Oh,
Putting you on
the
the
real
spot.
name?
No.
Transfer.
No, just what it.
Oh, what it is?
What it is, yeah.
Some of the stuff like I said with my hand, and it's a short time. I would have hand up like this, and it would come down, hitting in the head. I go, this doesn't sound right. But it's only for a while. Speech, same thing. I couldn't speak or anything, just for minutes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Then you're back to normal.
yeah,
So a
the leg
TIA
thing and all that, yeah.
can be a blessing and a curse, because as Jim is describing, he had symptoms for minutes and then they went away.
Right.
So then you don't go to the hospital, and then you had symptoms for minutes and then they went away.
Yeah.
And then when you had symptoms again, did you go to the hospital?
No.
No. So the danger
I
there is that.
A woman would, but I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when you have those little, we call them warning strokes. When you have a warning stroke, you think, oh, this happened to me before, I'm familiar with this, my symptoms will go away, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait. But really, and not to shame Jim here, but ideally, he would have gone to the hospital the first time he had those warning signs.
Right.
So that way we could look to see what's going on and maybe prevent a future stroke.
Because I think waiting too long made mine worse a little bit, quite a bit, I guess. And so should go right away to the hospital. And nobody wants, you know, I was there, I guess, I don't want the ambulance to come in my driveway, go to the driveway next door. I don't want the neighbors going, there's something wrong with me. But I couldn't speak, so I didn't know how to. And so, yeah, you should actually go to that, because now they have more stuff in the hospital. Some of the ambulances now have, like Central Page has the ambulance with all the MRIs and everything in there.
Yeah, they have a CAT scanner.
Yeah, it goes right to right in your driveway. They do everything. It's pretty expensive, but whatever. But yeah, that's weird. We'll never do it, but yeah. But that's a good thing. I think people are now learning more about the strokes. When I had my stroke too, all my friends came to visit me in the hospital, and they got worried, and so they all went to doctors themselves, because they haven't gone, you know, we never go on it. And they all went to the doctors, found out they had high blood pressure, AFib, all these things. But at least they got them to go to hospital or doctors, you know, and it worked. I mean, just some of your friends help you do that for some reason. So, because when I volunteered to do the strokes thing, because I also had 2015, I had open heart surgery at Sherman, and we had a heart institute. Those guys would be there. Of course, they pay them to come there, but I had more people for there. Nobody came to visit me in the stroke thing at all. Of course, it's nice to use them, but so I wanted to do people with strokes. Strokes are much worse than the heart thing. I mean, some people will say no, because I thought I was having a heart attack to begin with, but no, a little later on. But, yeah, and it's good that, people, you know that people had strokes, and so it's worse. That's, because Craig and I deal with the people all the time, and of course Sandra and Christine, and they do it every day, but, it's much worse. Because first thing, we have a problem with depression's the first big problem. All of them have depression, which is hard. If they have depression, they can't do anything. They don't want to do anything, which is bad, because then you can't do therapy because Medicare insurance won't pay for it. So, but yeah, depression's a big thing, and then they don't know how. They never had with their hand. How do you do anything with their hand? You know, you have to use the other hand. Well, they never had to deal with that before,
Yeah.
and it's hard. Yeah.
A lot of obstacles to overcome.
Oh yeah.
That no one is prepared for, because no one prepares for a stroke. And so you're left with this new life, and it can be, yeah, it can lead to
Oh,
many
yeah.
things, anxiety and depression, and thankfully Jim leads our support group.
Yeah.
And,
Good luck.
along with one of the chaplains at the hospital.
Right.
And to provide that community of support, which can be lost. You can feel isolated after a stroke, like you're alone and no one understands you, but that's what we're trying to prevent, right?
Because I think when Craig and I would go to the rooms, they like talking to us, because we're not doctors. Because who knows what they're talking about. And so they want to see somebody that recovered from this stuff. And that's all they want to see, because they want some hope. The only reason I want all the therapy, well, my family, of course, and my daughter and my wife are great caregivers, and so they help me a lot. But, yeah, I just wanted to play golf again, to be honest. And I go on crib, so now I can't play golf. But I do adaptive golf. I just went to Pebble Beach, so I'm playing a little bit now, but it's like not as good anymore, but that's fine. That's what I wanted to do, because I didn't have any good hobbies. I don't know, I probably should have, but I had other stuff to do. But, yeah, so. But, yeah, going to the hospital is important. And, okay.
Yeah, I still got a little more. You can stay up here with me.
Not fine.
You're good?
Yeah.
Thank you for
so
sharing
much.
your
All right.
story.
So what puts someone at risk for a stroke? Jim gave us a few hints, if you guys were listening. So things that we can't change. We can't change the year that we were born, can't change the sex that we were born, and our ethnicity. But things that we can make a difference on, smoking. So we talked about smoking before. If you smoke or know someone who smokes, it is never too late to quit. It took my mom 8 tries, but on the 8th try, it stuck, and she just kept trying. You know, there's different times in your life, and as long as you never give up, then you might be successful on the 8th try. You might be successful on the 2nd try, but you'll never know if you don't try. Atrial fibrillation. So when I first heard this, I thought, what can I do if I have atrial fibrillation? It just sounds like it's something that it's a funny heartbeat. How can I affect that? But what you can do is talk to your doctor and get on a blood thinner or get on medicine to control your heart rate. There's things that we can do to control our risk, and if we do that, then the risk goes down. So untreated AFib, your risk is 5 times greater to have a stroke, but if you get on a blood thinner, you have medicines to control your heart rate, then that risk goes back down to that of somebody who doesn't have AFib. So we really can make a difference with these things. Sedentary lifestyle. Walking is so underrated. I don't need everyone going out and lifting heavy weights at the gym. I certainly do not. But if you can get up and walk and do little things every day, increase your activity as much as you safely can, then that will make a big difference. Uh-oh. Come back, okay, good. High blood pressure, so that's one of those things, again, we wanna make sure that we are knowing if we have high blood pressure. Some people, like, I'm just throwing all my family under the bus here, but my husband hasn't been to the doctor since his pediatrician. So, that, when he goes and his blood pressure is 135 over 20, or not 20, 135 over 85, that's considered high blood pressure now. So we're getting more and more strict because we realize the long-term impact of having an increased blood pressure. So, knowing your blood pressure, knowing the numbers, that's empowering. Don't be scared. It can be scary going to the doctor and getting bad news, but the more you know, the more that you can do. So, know these numbers. Same thing with high cholesterol. You can change your diet. You can work with your doctor. Sometimes people just genetically have high cholesterol and it takes a little bit more than diet, and that's where medicines can come in. But they can make a big difference in your cholesterol numbers and overall inflammation. So it's really important to know those numbers. Same thing with diabetes, your blood sugar. You can control your blood sugars. Watch how certain foods affect you. And then obesity, I think that goes with sedentary lifestyle and being active and watching what we eat to just make sure, and we'll talk about diet, but these are things that we can control and that can have a lasting impact. No? No, we already talked about all this. Yes, so how many of you have heard to limit your stress levels? Yeah. My grandma's doctor told her, just stop watching the news. That'll fix your high blood
There you go.
pressure. I think she needed a little bit more than that, but it did help a little. But limiting stress, and this can look very different. It can just be taking a minute to pause and take deep breaths. Could be recognizing yourself and things that you're grateful for recognizing your environment and the people that you love. So there's different ways to limit stress. Sometimes we can't always change jobs. We all need money. It's just how the economy works, but there's little things that we can do to make sure that our needs are getting met as well. And then what foods are part of a heart healthy diet? We don't like to get very prescriptive. Everybody needs different things. If you have high blood pressure, then you might need a lower salt diet. What we do know, there's a lot of evidence that the Mediterranean diet works well in limiting any cardiovascular diseases, including stroke. But my general advice to you guys is eat the rainbow. Fiber, vegetables, you can do frozen vegetables. There's really easy prepared stir fries that I love. They're just frozen and then you cook them and it looks like you spent hours making something and then you just let the praise come in, but you didn't have to do much work. Make it easy on yourself. You can get fresh or frozen. You could do canned vegetables. For the vegetables that are canned, look for the sodium content because it might be higher in salt. And then for vegetable or fruits that are canned, careful of the sugar because it might be high in sugar, but you can rinse those off and help to make those a little bit healthier. And then what do you do if you've already had a stroke? So one, find a local support group. There's 3 at Sherman. So we highly recommend them to everyone. One of them is led by a speech therapist. There's one that Jim helps to lead, and then we have a virtual support group, which is amazing for anyone who has transportation issues. Learn to advocate for yourselves and your loved ones. Learn that it's okay to ask for help, and that doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. People have such a hard time asking for help, so when you learn how to do that, that makes you stronger, and it'll make you stronger over time, because then you're able to do more. Like I said before, when you come to the hospital, we want to care for you. We want you to come in, and so that we can get this all figured out with you. We are your advocates, and you are your own advocate. Figure out your support system. So who can you call when you have a question or concern? So who can you call when you need food? If you need someone to run to the grocery store for you? Or who can you call if you have a medical question? Just know your resources and who you can rely on. Nobody can be everything for somebody, but we all have this community around us and we can help each other out. And we want to, again, it just makes us stronger all together. Find a way to give back. Earlier, Jim and I were talking about, we had a simulation at the hospital that the nurses had to go through. So this is for the nurses to get practice in a safe and controlled environment, and Jim was our simulated patient. So he helped the nurses go through that simulation to get experience working with a stroke patient, and then he was able to give them feedback. So it was a really beautiful moment for the nurses to see someone once they're outside of the hospital and how stroke still impacts them, and it can give them compassion when dealing with someone who's had a stroke in the future. So find ways to give back. Volunteering is really a big option, working with a support group. And then follow up with your primary care provider, your neurology team, your cardiologist, just your whole healthcare team. You'll meet many of them if you've had a stroke. You know what I mean. But make sure that you follow up, and if you can't take your medicine, if you're having side effects or you can't afford it anymore, let them know. Some people will cut their medicines in half. Don't do that. Just let us know that you can't afford new medications, and then we'll work with you. So it's very important to be very frank with your healthcare team so that we can support you as best as we can. Okay, post quiz. Who knows what PFAS stands for? Yay! And I have a flyer up here in case anyone wants to test yourself at home or test loved ones. Who can name one risk factor for having a stroke? Good. What percentage of strokes are preventable? 80%. Yes. Knowing the warning signs of a stroke saves lives. Yeah, you got that one.
Yes.
On the free quiz though.
Pretty basic.
Well,
I'm sorry, I just said that was pretty basic.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to scare you guys away.
That's why we're having this program after all.
Given this information, will you do anything differently to help decrease your risk of stroke or a secondary stroke? And that's it.
Let's
You guys have any
big
questions?
thank you to Sandra. Thank you so much.